I'm going to introduce myself. My name is Juzo. As Omar said, I work at MTT for a little bit more than 1 year now. And we started working with Swift like for 1 month ago. So that's my whole experience in Swift. So it's a new project. It's different from what they are doing at Zendesk because it's a whole new project entire in Swift. So makes things easier. But what I want to talk today is about dependency injection, something that we use in Objective-C a lot at MTT. Basically, I think all the projects has it. And the challenge was how are we going to do that in Swift now? Because a lot of things changes, and I'm going to share with you my experiences so far. So first, what is dependency injection? This is the Wikipedia first line definition. So it's a software design pattern that implements inversion of control for resolving dependencies. Actually, it sounds very complicated, but it's very simple. Is it readable? So basically, I'm going to show this example here without. Can you put this a little bit? I think it's too loud. I hear some feedback. Do you hear that? Yeah. So, yeah, this first class here called pet owner, each has a dependency called pet.
Sorry, you want to expand this one? Okay.
Hey, thank you. All right, so as I was saying, we have the pet owner class. I have pet as one of the dependencies, and when in my init method, I'm creating the cat, and I am populating my property. So this is the example without dependency injection. The second example here, I have the same context, but when I init my class, I have, whoever is creating this class is responsible to give me this the path. So, this is actually the concept of dependency injection. I'm not responsible to create the dependency inside my context or my model. But whoever is creating that is responsible to give that to me. I've created another one here just because it's Swift, and it has this cool feature of you can give like the full initializer in the parameter. So if you don't send any argument into your init or any function, it creates and it gives that to you. So it is dependency injection as well. Let me start the presentation. All right, so it can be very complicated to handle all of this. Imagine that you have a view controller with a lot of dependencies. You need a view model, and the view model needs its dependencies. And if you use Viper, you can have even much more dependencies than that. So it's going to be crazy every time that you want to create a model. So you can use a framework for that. And we usually use Typhoon in all of the company. Have someone heard about Typhoon? Right? So Typhoon does the job very well. We use that in all the projects, and it works fine. So if you are interested about dependency injection and implement that to your project, I would say that this would be your first option. Just check that out. But it's not working for me in Swift because of this guy. I don't know if you are familiar with this one. In 2015, he called himself the professor of blowing your mind. and he actually did for this entire year. He introduced like a new way to think about how to program in Swift, and actually how to program using instead of objects. So every time I create a new class, I think, do I need a class? Can I use protocols? And I'm sure this is a very big topic, but it's enough to say that I want to inject structs in my dependencies. I want to be able to do that, and Typhoon doesn't allow me to do that. So I've researched a little, and I found like 2 libraries that does that in Swift, and they are pure Swift. And this was the one that I liked most, Inject. So it has all the features that I need for a dependency injection library. But the one that that made me choose this library is because it supports the value type. So you can actually inject the structs if you want. So basically, this library works around this class. It's a final class called container. It is responsible to manage the types of dependencies, to register the types that should be resolved by that dependency, and to get the instance that your dependencies will need to resolve. So this is a quick example. You are creating the container, and you are using your container to register. Register, it's like one of the main methods of this the container. So you are registering a animal type that you are allocating here, and now you are just actually registering that to your container. You're also registering the pet owner. There is a person type. So if you see person type is a protocol, and pet owner can resolve the pet owner dependency that is the pet in the initializer here. So after you do that, you can use the container instance to say container.resolve, and you ask for like person type that you registered, and it's going to give you the pet owner with all the dependencies injected. So this can cause some problems, because let's say that you have dependencies that conforms to the same protocol. Like you can, as a pet owner, you can have a dog and you can have a cat, and they both conforms to the animal type protocol. So it can cause problems if you don't know how to differentiate one dependency to the other. So the way that Swinject handles that's by naming. It's not great, but it at least gives you an opportunity to differentiate those 2 dependencies. But if the type is different, like let's say that it conforms to the animal type protocol, but the type is cat and the other type is dog, you don't need to do that. It's not going to override your dependency in the registration. You can also, if you have the name as it is in the example here, and if you have different number of parameters, you can also need to worry about to see if you're getting the right dependency into your object. So there are basically 2 ways that we use to insert dependencies. The first way is the initializer, the property, and the method. I will go through all of them. So this is the initializer injection. This is more like the way I do. I always use the dependencies in the initializer when I think that my class or my struct needs that dependency to work. Otherwise it's not gonna do its job. So it's a required dependency. So let's say you are working with Viper and you have a interactor. Doesn't have any sense to have an interactor if it doesn't have the service. So it's a required dependency. And I tend to put that in the initializer. So here is the example. I'm doing the exactly same thing with the pet owner. And you see here that I'm adding the dependency in the initializer. The second one is the property injection. I do that when, first, when I have circular dependencies, and secondly, when I think that dependency is not that required, like it's kind of optional. No, my class still works if that is no. So I tend to put that in the initializer. I mean, in as a property. So here is where I am resolving that dependency by populating the property using the resolve. So yeah, I didn't explain very well this closure that Swift the container uses on the register method, mostly because I don't understand very well closure yet. So, and the last one, to be honest, I never used this one, is let's say you have a class that you want to use dependency injection, but this class is already there, and there are some dependencies that are only, you can only populate with a method. And there's no property, and you need or the property is private. So the only thing that you have access is the method. So you can use the method injection as well. So another topic is the circular dependencies. I think it's important just to put it here because it's important to know that it's there. It can be a problem sometimes. So what it is, circular dependencies is basically when you have a class that have like a dependence, and this instance, this dependence also have that same class as a dependence as well. So if you think you can see some problems about the retain cycle and its circular dependencies and how they are going to initialize that. So how the swing jack handles that. This is one of the things that Typhoon is much better. You almost don't need to worry anything about how you are going to create that when you are using Typhoon. But in Swift Inject, you only can do using the initialized property, which means that one of your class needs to add in the initializer the dependency, and the other one needs to be a weak reference. It needs to be a weak property. Or you can have two properties, but you can't have two initializer. And it makes sense because it avoids the retain cycle. So here is the example, just to give a show. You have parent, and parent has a child type as a dependency, and I am injecting using the initializer. And I also have a child with the weak reference for the parent. Also important to mention about the scope. So when you are creating the dependencies, you want to be able to create things like sync or to create a new instance every time that you inject something. So this is how you control. It's in enum. So it's pretty easy. Just I don't have any example, but after you register your class here, like here, you can just put a dot after this, and you can set the enumeration as the scope that you prefer. So, if you choose none, it's going to create a new instance every time. If you choose graph, it's going to be a singleton by the time it's resolving all the dependencies, but after that, it's going to be a new dependency, a new object. And if you choose container, it's going to be the singleton. Hierarchy is a little bit more complex. I'm still trying to figure, but it works with another topic that I'm not covering here because you almost never use, but it's when you have a hierarchy of containers. So it's maybe a more complex way to work with dependency injection. So my conclusion about this, in this 1 month working, it's changing a lot. In this 1 month, I used to love this framework, but now I'm quite, I don't know. Maybe I want to wait for Typhoon. Typhoon is kind of creating its pure Swift version of dependency, its framework. So I'm looking forward for that. But meanwhile, the good things about this is because it supports value type. So you can add your structs there. You can conform it to the protocols, and it's going to work fine. I've tested. It's very easy to learn and to use. The syntax is pretty straightforward. It works with generics. This is something that Typhoon doesn't have. Typhoon works a lot with the Objective-C IDs, so everything is going to be resolved in runtime. So if something goes wrong, you'll see a crash. So in Swift Inject, most of the things you're going to see in the compile time. So if it runs, probably it's going to work. And another good thing is I didn't see anything that I need and it doesn't have. So it has all the features that I need. The bad thing is the first and the one that terrifies me more is if you have Cocoa Pods 1.1 and you install the pods, it doesn't create the frameworks properly. So it doesn't support Cocoa Pods 1.0, which is weird. and Swift 3, so we have talked about that already. It's a 100% Swift dependence. So what's going to happen when we have the new version of Swift, and we will need, we depend on this 100% Swift, and we don't know when they are going to update. So we might need to keep the version of our Xcode for a while. And I feel that the community is not very strong because there are some problems like these Cocoa Pods that this problem is there for 2 weeks and no pull requests, and I take part of this blame, but I have no time. But basically, I think it worth to say that if you want to work with dependency injection and still, if you want to work with a protocol-oriented way, you can do using Swift Inject. And this is it. Questions? No, yeah, we are mixing some Objective-C, especially because we are using some products, but then we use Typhoon. So we have 2 frameworks. I never try to, my first option will always be Typhoon, But I never tried. It's good. It's a good question.
Can you give us a real-life example, like for instance, you don't know where can I use
Dependency injection. Yeah. Okay. So let's say that you have this view controller and do you use some kind of architecture like model view view model or Viper? Let's say you use model view view model. So you always have the view model as a dependence of your view controller. So sometime this view model needs to be instantiated and configured to work properly. Like this view model can have services, it can have no more than one service. You know, it can have cache, it can have multiple services, and by the time you are using your view model or view controller, you want to make sure that you have all those dependencies ready and well configured, because if you try to do that inside the life cycle of the model that you are working, you can cause some problems. It cannot, it can probably work in some way that you don't expect. The other advantage of using that, I would say, it is consistency between those dependencies. So if you have a builder to create using dependency injection to create those models, you can in an easy way control how you're going to configure those. Let's say I was talking about this service that is a dependency of one of your view models, but can be a dependency of more than one of your view models. So you have this builder configured, and all its dependencies injected already. So it's going to give you you are going to be sure that every time you are using that service is going to work the way you configured that ONS. So it gives you consistency. Also give you more, it's going to be easier to test, because when you can configure using the initializer, for example, your model, you can choose like to inject a mock service, and the class itself is going to work just the way it was supposed to, but depending with the dependency that you inject, it's going to behave differently. Yeah, there are many things, but I understand that it's not that important, Yeah. Anybody else?
Is there any back matching on the flows?
I didn't get you.
So like, let's say your state is a certain way, can you initialize a different way if there's a state of an object is different? So like Moon, you can actually pattern match on the station. And if it's this way, you can use this factory. If it's another way, you can use a different factory. Very Objective-C type question.
Yeah, I don't know. Yeah, actually, I don't know. Yeah, probably, but yeah, I need to check actually to answer correctly to you. Yeah.
After 1 month of Swift, are you a convert, or are you going to go back?
Yeah, there are some days that you just wake up and yeah, I used to love Objective-C, and but I like Swift, and I want to keep going, especially because these value type things, it intrigues me. Yeah, so. Eugene, with these 3 questions, every question that he makes, he's going to make one question after one. Right, yeah. Value type, when you create a structure instead of an object, I think you have a more easy to understand way to know how that instance is going to work and how it's going to behave. Let's say that you have properties inside that, and if it is mutable or immutable. So when you are working with objects or reference type, you are actually dealing with a reference and not the type itself. So it can be a little trick when you are mutating this instance, especially when you are trying to work with functional programming. So it can give you some unexpected results. So it's just easier to work with structs if you are intending to work with functional programming. Yeah, that's the main value, and most because that guy that I saw that I showed before. Yeah. Thank you. Thanks.